Okay, so good afternoon from London, or good morning to three of our four panelists who join us from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. Welcome to our webinar, Planning for Recovery. How can governments worldwide help small businesses to build back better? My name's Ian Hall. I'm the editor of Global Government FinTech, a sister title to Global Government Forum. Both our publications report on trends and innovation in the public sector to serve our audience of civil servants around the world. Small businesses are estimated to employ about 70% of the world's workforce and contribute about half the world's GDP. They are and will remain fundamental to economies, particularly when it comes to creating jobs to help us recover from the pandemic. Today, we're asking, what are the greatest challenges faced by small businesses as the pandemic continues? How have public and private sectors collaborated to drive economic resilience and digitisation among small businesses during the pandemic? And how can governments best help small businesses to understand and plan for the world beyond the pandemic? We'll begin with short presentations or opening remarks from our four panellists. We aim to save about half the time from questions from you, our worldwide audience. As questions occur to you, just click the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window and type them in. Please add a note if you wouldn't like me to use your name as I put the question. Today's webinar is kindly supported by our knowledge partner, MasterCard, whose support enables us to offer the webinar free to public servants. We have two hashtags, which are hashtag small business and hashtag build back better. We have three panelists from North America and one, Pavel Winkler from Prague, the capital of the Czech Republic. We'll hear first from Tim Ogden, who leads the Financial Access Initiative at New York University Wagner, which is a research center focused on exploring how financial services can better meet the needs and improve the lives of poor households. Next, we have Mr. Winkler from Prague. He's been director in the Czech Republic's Department of the Business Environment and Internal Trade, part of the Ministry of Industry and Trade since 2017. He's responsible for finding ways to improve the country's business environment by reducing the administrative burden on entrepreneurs. Back in North America, we have Andrea Gilman, who is the Global SME Segment Lead at MasterCard. In this role, she's developing the company's portfolio across payments, cyber, and data. And fourth, we have Daryl Julot, who has strong experience working within public-private partnerships on programs focused on technology adoption and community building. Daryl works for Digital Main Street in Toronto, which we look forward to hearing more about in the opening comments. So first of all, let's go over to Tim Ogden. Over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Ian. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone around the world. As Ian mentioned, my name is Tim Ogden. I'm the Managing Director of the Financial Access Initiative, which he so ably introduced. We are primarily known for our work with financial diaries, and Maria, if you move to the next slide, where we track low-income households for over a long period of time to better understand how they manage their financial lives. Recently, with support from the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth in collaboration with them and with support from the MasterCard Impact Fund, we've launched a SME Insight community to turn to some of these vital questions around small businesses. And I'll return to talking a bit more about that at the end. But here I want to just quickly give us a lay of the land on what is happening in the global pandemic for small businesses. And Maria, if you take us to the next slide, I'm not going to dwell on this because I think we all know the realities of the pandemic and what it has meant for small businesses. This is a set of data from the World Bank enterprise surveys where they did a rapid response to their normal survey cycle and documenting just how much worse the economic situation is for small businesses in a variety of countries around the world. We also see that in high frequency data being gathered by other more specific organizations. The next slide shows data from the US from the JP Morgan Chase Institute and showing how much revenues have declined for small businesses in the wake of shutdowns. And this is a pattern that's repeated all over the world. We see this in IFC surveys, we see this in country level surveys, we see this in government surveys. There's no question that small businesses are bearing the brunt of the economic impact. Now, along with that, then we have to ask, what is the impact of small businesses bearing the brunt of those impacts? Now, to start answering that question, though, we do have to spend a little bit of time on defining terms, because one of the challenges in doing research in this area is that the phrase SME or small business or MSME, those acronyms are widely used and very rarely used to mean the same things. So many countries define a micro business as 0 to 10 employees, and small businesses as 10 up to some ceiling that in some cases, the United States definitions of small business go up to firms with more than 1,000 employees. And I think most policymakers around the world would sort of scratch their head at the idea that there's a business with more than 1,000 formal employees being small, much less mid-sized. The other key question as we address small business and thinking about it from a policy perspective is, does the term include what we technically call non-employer firms, which I personally find to be a much more useful term for separating out. There is a very, very big distinction between firms that do not have any employees, that it's essentially the individual operating their own business, versus one that has hired at least one employee. That's a big change in mentality and in structure that I think is a real key distinction. And so as I'm talking about small businesses, here I am referring to those businesses that have made that transition from a non-employer firm to an employer firm, at least one employee, up to about 50 employees. And I find that to be a useful distinction to be thinking about. But every policy conversation that you have that talks about helping small business really needs to begin with this idea of who exactly is it that you're talking about, because you can't assume by using the words small business that anybody thinks about the same thing. So on the next slide, let's get into the questions of why, from a policy perspective, is it important to support small business? And I think we need to start these conversations from a place of honesty. On average, small firms are less productive than larger firms. On average, small firms are less innovative than larger firms. And across the world, small firms are not net job creators. They create a lot of new jobs, but they close down at very, very high rates. And so you see significant job loss. So on net, small businesses are essentially churning a lot of jobs. You often hear a lot of rhetoric about small business job creation, but that's only if you look at new jobs in small businesses and don't take into account net job losses. But this is not to say by any means that we shouldn't, as a policy matter, be supporting small businesses. There are very, very good reasons to support small businesses. Ian hinted at one of these, is that small businesses account for a very large portion of employment in countries around the world. In the UK, it's around 60%. In the United States, it's around 50%. In Australia and Canada, it varies between 40 and 50%. We go to less developed countries, middle income countries, and it's typically 80, maybe even 90% of employment is coming from small businesses. Maria, if you take us to the next slide. But I'll confess where I come from the perspective of what is the situation for low-income households and low-income communities, and within the small business world, if you think about who these small businesses are owned by and who they employ, to me that is the reason why we really need policy perspectives focused on supporting small business. Is that many of these small businesses, obviously not all of them, but many of the small businesses are owned by people at the median income and below. These are labor market failures, that these people are creating small businesses because there aren't a lot of other opportunities for them in these larger, more productive firms. And they tend to be the ones, particularly in low-income communities, who create jobs for low-income households. As we lose these small businesses, it's not as if those low-wage employees are suddenly going to transition to work at high-wage, high-productivity large businesses. These are where the jobs are. And so as we think about impact on small business, there is this very, very important knock-on impact on the wages, on the employment of low-income individuals in countries around the world. And we're starting to see this data emerge now in government surveys, is that it's not just the small businesses that are more affected. It's the low-income wage earners who are seeing the biggest drops in wages. In some sense, more than ever, we are entering into a recession that is bifurcated between high-income wage earners who have not been affected and low-income wage earners who are seeing massive disruptions. The channel to get to those workers who are seeing those disruptions is largely going to be through small business. And that is, to me, the greatest argument for why policymakers really need to focus on helping small businesses. So if we are going to help them, moving on to the next slide, the question is, what do they need? And to be honest, from a research perspective, there's a big black hole here. The amount of research that we have on small business operations isn't great. And typically, the research that we do have is focused on one-time surveys or very high-level questions of what were your annual revenues, how many people did you employ? What we're seeing, very much brought to light in this pandemic is that the life of a small business, as any small business owner will tell you, isn't lived on a yearly basis. It's lived on a weekly basis. It's lived on a daily basis. Where is the money coming from today? Where are my customers today? Where are my suppliers? Do I have the working capital I need today? Can I make payroll this week? And so our body of research hasn't tended to focus on these small firms because they're difficult to study. There are a lot of them. And getting this high frequency data can be challenging. Thankfully, we are starting to get data from organizations like MasterCard who do have the technology infrastructure to track and help us gain these better understandings. But thinking through what are some major categories of things that can be done for small businesses. Credit has been a focus of a lot of policy in the aftermath of the pandemic and shutdowns. And clearly there's a cash flow issue that many, many small businesses have. And credit is an obvious tool to deal with that. Now, as we're entering 6-9 months into the pandemic and looking at the extent to which some of these effects are going to persist, I think policymakers really need to be thinking about what's the next wave, because small businesses don't tend to be the most profitable businesses. They tend to carry as much debt as they can handle already. And when we extend additional credit to them as a coping strategy, that can get them through the short term, but those debts are going to come due. And when we see a slow recovery, as we are seeing in many cases, it's been better than the worst case scenarios, but I think we should be planning for long-term effects. It's going to be very, very challenging for many of these small businesses to stay current on their existing credit. Extending them more credit in order to help them survive a credit crunch. Again, it's a short-term solution, but I think as policymakers, we really need to be thinking about what happens when those bills come due. How many of these small businesses are going to be in a position to repay even concessionary credit? Are we going to create a more difficult recovery situation by creating a wave of small business bankruptcies when the concessional terms come to an end? I also think we have to think about what are the effects of the pandemic on the financial institutions that do serve small businesses. They are going to experience their own credit crunch. Lending to small businesses is always going to be more expensive than lending to larger businesses. They're harder to underwrite. They require just as much paperwork for smaller amounts and therefore for smaller revenues from the lenders. And so I think policymakers need to have this dual view of how do we extend a lifeline to small businesses? How do we make sure that we're not creating a debt trap for them on the other side of that? And how do we make sure that our financial institutions are healthy enough to survive a tightening when we do get into trouble with some of these small businesses repaying some of these loans. Another thing that's been a big focus in the aftermath of the pandemic is digitization. And clearly there's a huge need for small businesses to be able to engage in the digital economy in an environment where face-to-face transactions are limited. However, I also think we need to be very clear that many of these small businesses, they continue to exist because of the personal relationships they have in their community. If going digital in the sense of e-commerce was a solution to this problem, then their customers would have migrated to the very big e-commerce platforms already. These businesses continue to exist because they offer something that can't be had purely digitally. And so we need to separate out on the digitization side, the part of digitization that is about payments and transactions and easing frictions in payments and transactions versus the actual process of commerce. Encouraging a whole bunch of small businesses to start competing with Amazon is not a solution to recovering economies. Market access. We just talked about why small businesses exist, and because these personal relationships and relationships with suppliers. I think something that policymakers haven't explored as much as they should is the ability to create better market access for small businesses, making it easier for them to find new markets, make it easier for them to deal with suppliers. And we can talk some more about that. And then finally, one of the questions I think that needs to remain top of agenda is on the management side. Many small businesses around the world are not operating at the top of the management game. It's hard to learn management skills. It's hard to teach them. And we've struggled from a research perspective to identify what are key management skills and what are good ways to teach them. And there's an emerging body of research that help with that. And I think equipping more small businesses with some tools to make sure that they can manage through some very difficult situations are some things that are worth exploring. I want to be clear, I'm not talking about standard financial literacy, which we know from a lot of research is not the problem. It is more the management optimization. How do we optimize supply chains? How do we better manage employees? How do we relate better to our creditors and to our suppliers? Those sorts of questions that would be more standard MBA business degree curriculums. So I'll close out here quickly, Ian, just by mentioning that we are about to launch a major research project, again, with the support of the MasterCard Impact Fund and the Center for Inclusive Growth, to start answering a lot of these questions about what small businesses need with small firm diaries, where we'll be tracking small businesses in 6 countries around the world. You see those on the map, where we'll be tracking their daily transactions for a full year so that we can better answer the question, what are the constraints, what are the barriers to small business growth and productivity, and what do they need, and what can policymakers do to help them? If you're interested, if any of the audience is interested in following that research, Maria, if you'd show the next slide, there's just a quick link there. You can follow it via our website or by subscribing to our occasional newsletter. This isn't one of those spammy newsletters. But if you're interested in questions of small businesses and financial access and financial inclusion, you'll find a lot to follow there in our newsletter. And I'll wrap up there.
Great, Tim. Thanks so much. That's a expansive kind of introduction to everything from kind of definitions to, of small businesses through to all sorts of kind of measurement and data challenges, and then the public policy challenges as well. It was a really interesting point you made about them being job creators, but also the kind of churn in jobs as well, that there's a lot of churn at the small business level. But so thanks for that great introduction. Let's go now then to the Czech Republic and go over to Pavel and hear his perspective from a country perspective. So 6 or 7 minutes, Pavel, over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Pavel Winkler. I am a director of the Business and Environmental and International Trade Department of the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Czech Republic, naturally. And firstly, I would like to say that I am very happy that I can join to this webinar. Thank you for the invitation. I believe that this webinar could be very effective for our entrepreneurs, for our special policies and preparation of special measures. Also, thank you very much. And I can start with my presentation. I will be short. I prepared maybe 5 slides, and this first slide is about our priorities in the Czech Republic. And we believe that digitalization is one of the most important priority, and really could be very effective in this very difficult time in which we are now, this pandemic COVID situation. And I would like to inform you about our key projects in this context. Also, digitalization, number one. Number two is really special measures for our enterprises, special measures. I mean this anti-pandemic COVID measures, and I will present and inform you about our concrete parameters of these programs. And naturally, we have some long-term strategies, a long-term policy in the field of fight against bureaucracy, administrative burden, and this is final slide of my presentation. Next, please. Number one is the example of cooperation between the state and the private sector in connection with digitalization of payments. I believe that this project is very effective in the Czech Republic. I know that we can say similar project exists in Poland, but really in the Czech Republic we can offer a special product, and this product is based on penniless, moneyless contribution of enterprises. Also on the basement of memorandum with cards companies, with bank institution, we can provide this moneyless payment terminals, mainly for SMEs, for freelancers, and really they can try these payment terminals free cost for 12 months. I believe that this period is enough to really try these terminals, and then they can decide if they have interest or not. And I would like to say that really I'm very happy that we can cooperate with, for example, MasterCard and other our partners. Also, this project, the name of this project is Czechia Pays by Card, and any other information you can find on the special website, and this website is in my this first slide. Also, next, please. The second, and we really prefer this digitalization in administrative burden reduction, and we prepare a special project as a special entrepreneur portal through which all companies and all SMEs you can solve any matters which they want to solve with public administration. This is our first project. Second, in database of information obligation, because we know that this number of obligation is still high, very high, and we would like to offer this special database, which could be really effective, because these enterprises can look only on one website, and I believe that they could have better view of their obligations. And also this control website, this is also a special website, because a control agenda, control issue is very broad in this context. And also we have in Czech Republic many controls institution, and we would like to have only one place in which we can coordinate these concrete control activities of these authorities, state authorities. Also, next, please. I would like to present also these special programs in connection with pandemic situation. Also, we know that the main problem of entrepreneurs is lack of money. The running cost is very difficult to because they have a really problem to ensure this running cost, and we are already ready to provide this concrete preferential loans and guarantees in cooperation with state, with national bank. This is Czech Moravian Guarantee and Development Bank, and we are ready to provide 500 billion Czech crowns in midterm review period, because we believe that it's very effective to promote, to support national economy, and to ensure really finance money for our enterprises, for our economy. And also this is number one. Second, we have provided during last 6 months special subsidies, because we know that and I mentioned it, that our companies has very big problem with money, and also we provided or we prepared free concrete programs. This is COVID rent with budget 2.8 billion Czech crown. One of the most problematic sector in this situation is really culture, because they don't have realize and implement their entrepreneurial activities. And really this COVID culture program is with the budget 0.9 billion Czech crowns. And the last one is COVID nursing program, because a lot of freelancers, a lot of SMEs and owner of SMEs have naturally babies, and they can't have this activity, and we really have supported these entrepreneurs. And also this is COVID nursing with budget 2.2 billion Czech crowns. And this is not all. We prepared with cooperation with our Ministry of Finance special flat tax rate for small businesses, because we know that most important issue for Czech enterprises is tax agenda. I mean this bureaucracy from this issue, and we believe that we really have to simplify this tax for our smallest entrepreneurs. This is flat rate with turnover up to 600,000 Czech crowns, and the last one is, maybe you know, this Kurzarbeit. This Kurzarbeit is German word, but we use it in this context because we need to help prevent more massive layoffs at companies due to a coronavirus, and we know that we need to prepare really long-term measure in the field of work places and workers. This Kurzarbeit is based on our contribution. We really pay, well, we will pay because now we are in the process of preparation of this measure. Also, we would like to pay 70% of a salary for these people, and we believe that we need to hold these people at these companies, and we would like really help in this area. And also we believe that we are ready to implement it, this measure from November 2020, also this year. We need really parliamentary approval, and we expected that we will be successful. Next slide, please. Also, SME package, I inform you about our long-term policy, and in this context, I can mention this special SMEs package. Really is a package of measures which were prepared directly for SMEs. I really have this link on this slide. You can look, you can check our success or not. And I am very happy that we have here in the Czech Republic only 2 dates for new legislation, to new law, because we believe that Czech enterprises, not only Czech but enterprises in the Czech Republic, needs to have their activities not only control what is new legislation, what they have to do, etc.
Pavel, if I could just come in there, thank you for the thorough kind of overview of the different challenges specifically in the Czech Republic. I think is this your final slide? Sorry.
I think that is my last slide.
Okay, I'm just conscious of the time, and we're
okay, no problem.
Okay, is this the final?
Yeah.
So I think we can come back to I was particularly struck by your emphasis on kind of reducing the bureaucratic burden on the businesses, and I guess the key question is the extent to which coronavirus is encouraging these kind of measures to be sped up, or obviously it's creating new challenges as well, which we can come to in the questions if that's okay. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Right, if we can go back across the Atlantic to Andrea from MasterCard then in that case. Andrea, over to you, and thank you, Pavel.
Great, thanks everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is just an honor to be here talking with you today. As Ian said, my name is Andrea Gilman, and I am the SME segment lead at MasterCard. And so what does that mean? Essentially, what I look at my job to do is to democratize access to the innovations that MasterCard has created in support of small businesses across the globe. And that spans things like payments, data insights, as well as protecting themselves from cyber threat, which is also incredibly important, especially in this day and age. And when we do that, and I think you've heard that from Tim and Pavel, we often also work with governments across the globe to help these businesses get access to the funding they need, to the insights and information, and importantly, and I think we touched upon this in the up front, access to education and training that small businesses across the globe really so crucially need. So why do we have such a focus on small business? And I think, again, Tim and Pavel touched on this, but from a global perspective, we see these businesses as the backbone of our communities across the globe. They represent 90% of businesses, 2/3 of employees, and in some markets, upwards of 50% of GDP. And as we've all discussed, we know the pandemic has had an incredibly devastating effect, affecting this segment more so than others. And so one of the things that we've done at MasterCard is we have committed $250 million in products, technologies, insights, services, cyber protection in support of SMEs across the globe. And we are working with our customers, with our partners to deliver these things. And I think also importantly to talk about kind of what we see as the opportunities and the needs. I think, again, as Pavel and Tim have said, there's two key areas that we're focused on. One is helping them get cash in the door. And so we're really focused on helping them get paid quickly and easily, and we're happy to talk about that. Secondly, and related to that, helping them get access to the capital that meets their needs in their situation. And so we can also talk further about that. And then thirdly, really helping them get access to more digital tools that can span anything from accepting digital payments, helping them market their businesses, again, helping them protect themselves from cyber threat. All those elements are really important. And the way that we do it is we also take into account local market differences and the size and the journey of that small business as they go forward. So all those points are super important. And I'm sure Ian will talk about that more in this session.
Great, thanks, Andrea. Yeah, you hit on every point to do with digitization there, and I heard one message I picked up from all presentations so far. I think Tim said that the small business sector is bearing the brunt. You said it's, I think, that the segment that's more devastated than others by the pandemic. So I think a lot is said about the as I introduced the presentation, it was about the ability of small businesses to create jobs, but Tim kind of made the point that there's the big churn in the market, and it's always a challenging market, but even more so at this time. So thank you, Andrea. We'll come back to those themes. So finally, the fourth and last but not least introductory remarks, over to Daryl, please, in Canada.
Thank you, Ian. I'll try and fly through these so we have some time for the questions at the end. Just wanted to thank Ian, yourself, and the team for putting it on. Andrea, yourself, Dimitri, Kobe, the rest of the MasterCard team that I'm sure I'm forgetting some names from, for inviting me, and the fellow panelists as well. So just really wanted to quickly give you guys a deep dive into the world that we've built here at Digital Main Street, and then touch on just kind of a few of the key findings and thoughts that we've had. Next slide, Maria. So before I jump into this napkin, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge one John Carew, who's in attendance. John is the executive director of TABIA, which is the Toronto Association of Business Improvement Areas. And the reason I mentioned that initially was only going to be because of this napkin, which he drew so beautifully about 6 years ago now. But also, Pavel, interestingly enough, John is born in the Czech Republic. So just another nice connection there. But so like any great programmer idea, we started somewhere. And so next month will actually be 6 years. Oh, sorry. Yeah, next month will be 6 years to the day that this concept of digital Main Street kind of came up. And John, as the executive director of Tabia at the time, was working with the city of Toronto very closely to identify what mechanisms of support were missing. There was a ton of stuff being done, a ton of programming, a ton of support in place already, but it was clear there was this very large gap, and that was kind of in the digital transformation, digital adoption realm. And again, most of what's on this napkin are still some of our founding principles today. One of the quotes that we're most famous for is it's from bricks and mortar to bricks and clicks, emphasizing the and, because we find that oftentimes people kind of tend to go bricks or clicks. And we're very, very focused on the concept of both and kind of how they work so harmoniously. And then you look at some messaging at the top, like bringing businesses into the 21st century, really looking at kind of the pillars around businesses and vendors, which I'll jump into in a second. Apologies. Next slide, Maria. So I'll leave this up, and I think this deck will be shared afterwards. But really, when we built out the program, we kind of settled on these 4 pillars, or not settled. These are kind of what's come out from the design and just the build and the reiteration of the program, which is supporting the digital transformation of these small business owners in any way, shape, or form. So really helping them digitize to grow their business, helping them digitize to streamline operations, just make themselves more productive. Really, any way they can leverage digital tech and digitization to become more effective business owners. Providing businesses with knowledge and guidance needed to make informed decisions, and empowering these businesses to become smart consumers themselves. So those two kind of go hand in hand. But what we very quickly realized was, especially in Toronto, it's crazy. A small business owner has 100 people a week coming into their store trying to sell them everything from payment processing to loyalty programs to hardware, software, whatever it may be. And we really wanted to make a pillar of what we were doing, not only the education around digitization, but also the education around, making sure these business owners know what to look for. What is a red flag? What is a reasonable cost? What are some questions they should be asking? So that if we're not there supporting them and they choose to engage a project, they've got a sense of what to look for. And then lastly, it's just looking at this concept of, really supporting our main streets. So, our main streets and the small businesses that make up those main streets are really the heart and soul of any of our cities, whether we're talking about Toronto, New York, the Czech, it's all the same. So really just supporting and continuing to ensure that we've got, a thriving main street. Next slide, Maria. And so really at its core, digital Main Street kind of comes down to these 4 boxes. There's a lot more that goes into it within each, but high level, we've got our platform, which is digitalmainstreet.ca. And that's our hub for everything to do with digital transformation, information, content, resources, education for these businesses. It provides them with a benchmarking tool. There's a proprietary digital assessment where they can, go through a short questionnaire, get a sense of where they're at from a digital literacy standpoint, but then also get connected to hyper-local vendors and opportunities to engage in projects if they choose. We publish about 50 pieces of content a month, between case studies, articles, partner content, you name it. And then we have a full learning management system as well. And then our digital service squad, very, very interesting concept, because it started out as more of a support mechanism for the platform. And we very quickly realized that it was exactly the other way around. And it was this digital service squad that has really become the heart and soul of everything that we do. And so that's a team of, usually recent graduates, but it does ebb and flow, that have a strong marketing business background, and they function as a free one-on-one support coaching mechanism for these businesses. So their entire role day to day is just to meet with business owners and provide them that one-on-one support. And all of this is done at no cost. That's the one thing I haven't mentioned yet, but to date, we're closing in on working with about 40,000 businesses, and we have not charged them $1. Then we have our Digital Main Street Academy, just a sub-brand that we created for all of our thought leadership online and in-person training. And then lastly, the Digital Main Street Lab, which is really us and our ability to play matchmaker between our thriving Main Street communities and local tech communities and the startup ecosystem, and really identifying new innovative projects and running some pilots for what the future of Main Street could look like. Next slide, Maria. I won't spend too much time on this, but in June, we did announce a fairly large provincial expansion in partnership with the province of Ontario and the federal government here. And that allowed us to launch these 3 programs. So we have our Shop Here powered by Google. That's an e-commerce play. So that's, realizing the changing market and, the need to be able to sell your product online and engage your customers in a different channel. We created that program to allow businesses to have an online store built at no cost to them. To date, we're at about, I think, give or take about 6,500 applicants that have gone through the program or are in the process of going through the program. And that continues to grow daily. We have a grant program where we provide SMBs with a grant to actually implement this digitization. A common piece of feedback that we often receive is the education is great, the training is great, the knowledge is great, but at the end of the day, we don't actually have the finances to action what you're suggesting we do. So that was a big part of launching the grant program. And then the Future Proof program is really a chance for, myself, John, and the team to look at, what is the future of Main Street? So I think, you've heard from kind of all of the speakers today that is going to change probably continuously for the next couple of years anyways. So what does that look like? Are there innovative solutions out there that we can implement now? Are there tech solutions? Are there streetscape solutions? Are there, are there other pieces of programming that can be created? So that was really, the genesis behind that. And again, we'll touch on some of the programming in a second, but next slide. And then obviously the kind of the key question that we're all here to talk about today is how can these governments across the world help small businesses build back better? Next slide. And so I put this this very plain slide together, but I did that purposely. And the one thing that I wanted to stress was I think, the very important thing is to look at both short and long-term program development. In a time like this, obviously there's a tendency to kind of just want to launch something and get it out there and do something short-term and just kind of have that visceral, spike in terms of support, but there might not be that long-standing kind of ability to maintain it, we'll call it. So what I did here is I just took a couple pictures from things that, are Toronto specific. So the top right is our banner from our Shop Here program, obviously. In the top left is a picture of one of our streets with curbside patios. So the city launched a program called Cafe TO, and that was built to allow restaurants and service-based businesses to extend their patio to obviously provide more space and still distant and serve customers. The bottom left is just, it's actually a screenshot from our Eventbrite. So we ran a series of events with the City of Toronto called Advice TO, and it was focused on different segments. So it's focused on retail, women entrepreneurs, tech, and a few other verticals. And then Dine Out TO is just another great example of a short-term programming piece that was launched to really promote, dining out and supporting local restaurants. And I'm not against the short-term programming. Let me be very clear. I think, the perfect mix of, launching these short-term initiatives that are going to, get people back out on the street and, really kind of, get picked up by media and just drive that attention that we need right now is fantastic. But at the same time, we need to have that critical, long-term strategy thought process in place to ensure sustainability. Next slide. And I wanted to talk a bit about, digital Main Street and what makes us unique. Just kind of talking about, how governments can build back and stuff. And I know I'm very proud of the model that we built at Digital Main Street and how we interact with our ecosystem. So, we've got Tabby at the top there, non-for-profit organization, owns and leads Digital Main Street. From a programming perspective, you've obviously got the public sector. The City of Toronto was greatly involved in building it, but now we've got about 400 municipalities across Canada that are involved in the program. And then most interestingly is the private sector. So, obviously we've got Andrea and the MasterCard team that have been a great supporter since day one, and we have a few other corporates. But it's that intersection of kind of all three parties that have allowed us to focus on the SMB model and really just drive that message home. I think next slide, just because it's my last slide. And I won't go over this, but really when we talk about long-term design, I really just kind of put when we built Digital Main Street, the interesting thing was getting the city to really buy into a design thinking concept. And so this was kind of the design thinking concept we used for Digital Main Street. And I wanted to put that out there because when we talk about long-term programming and really kind of creating something that is going to be sustainable and continue to provide support and all of that, I think, utilizing a model like this and really looking at the design thinking model will work well. And I think that is my final slide, just because I know I'm over time, so I do apologize.
Great. It looks like it is. I don't see a new slide appearing. So thanks, thanks, Daryl, for that overview of your project. There was one thing it was interesting you mentioned about one of the many things you do is building online stores, and I couldn't help but one of the things I noted down that Tim had said at the start was. Sorry, Tim, if I've misquoting, but it was something along the lines of enabling businesses to compete with a world-leading online retailer may not be the solution for everyone. I'll come to you, Tim, just because I thought you might want to pick up on that. But before I do, just a couple of kind of general comments. I think we've roughly got kind of half an hour for questions, and as I said at the start, we really welcome them from our global online audience. We've had a couple in from Anna Vasilovsky, so thank you, Anna, for your questions. I will try and get to those before a couple that we were keen to stick to at the start, which is the theme of today's event. So I'm going to come to Tim in a second, but the first question I just want to put to everyone, and after Tim, I'll potentially come, I think, to Andrea next, is just to look. Obviously, we're talking about the challenges that Corona has created for small businesses. That's the theme. But I'm interested to hear how you think they've evolved. Obviously, this is, we're kind of 6 months into this. So back in March, April, it was no one foresaw what was happening. There was talk of this accelerating trends, but sadly, here we are 6 months in, and I guess what governments thought they needed to do, obviously many acting very quickly back in March, the demands of small businesses have changed, and the programs have changed. So I think if I can just go to Tim just to pick up maybe on I feel rather cruel picking up on that specific point about giving everyone an online shop front, but it kind of, I thought that was a bit of a kind of contrast. And then potentially, if I'll come to all the panel to ask that question of how SMEs kind of challenges have evolved over the last 6 months. So Tim, if I can come to you then on that point, or any others you want to pick up on.
Sure, thanks, Ian. And I think there is a contrast there, but I don't know that it's as deep as it may sound at first blush. We are in a situation where small businesses need to be able to interact with their customers digitally. The concern is these sort of easy papered over ideas that, oh, well, all they need is a digital storefront. And I don't think that's by any means what Daryl and the Main Street Toronto are talking about, right? It's that this is a broad program of support that builds on the role that the small business plays in the community. Where I get concerned is where I see these, oh, all we need to do is get them online and then they'll be fine, which is obviously markedly not the case. And so we need to develop these holistic programs that don't just say, well, send them to Squarespace to launch a website and to Shopify to have an online cart. Doing business digitally is quite different. And many of the small businesses don't have experience doing online customer service, or once I have a storefront, how do I get people to come to that storefront? So it's not an easy solution. I think the role in terms of policy that we need to be very aware of is thinking about concentrations of power that go along with some of these transitions. I'm old enough to remember when competition authorities were really concerned about payments infrastructures, and it turns out that that's not necessarily where we need to be worried about concentrations of power. It's in these platforms that provide the underlying infrastructure for e-commerce for reaching customers. If you're dependent wholly on Google or on Amazon to drive customers your way, as a small business, you have really no power in that situation. And so I think as we think about the digital transition too, we need to be thinking about how this affects the entrenching power in certain parts of the economy that's doing well. And small businesses are really, really disadvantaged when it comes to some of those very large platform organizations that can make or break a digital commerce interaction.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tim. I'm sure maybe Andrea maybe wants to pick up on maybe the theme of that as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Tim. A lot of great points. I think I'd like to respond with a few key things to think about. First and foremost, this transformation to digital is real. We have seen the uptick in e-commerce transactions across the globe, and it's significant. In the U.S. alone, a very developed market, year-over-year increase in e-commerce is 93%, which is really a stunning statistic. I think another important point to consider is, what do we mean by going digital, right? And Tim, you started to allude to this. So what we've done at MasterCard is we've created a digital acceleration set of platforms and capabilities that vary market to market. And they include things like, as we said, setting up a digital storefront. They include this idea of helping SMEs get paid in a way that is quick and easy. And again, that might vary place to place. So in some markets, like South Africa, we may enable a phone to be able to be a cheap and expensive point of sale unit. So again, in more sophisticated markets, that may look differently. We are also really trying to help them market and reach their customers in a digital way. So we have created a site called shopopening.com, which lets consumers know which small businesses are open. That's a basic piece of information that is so important. And also created partnerships with the likes of Facebook and Google and so forth to help them market. We're also really cognizant of the fact that we need to make sure that SMEs understand that they need to protect themselves from cyber threat. And so not only do we have education and training there, but we also offer fee-free for a series of months some of our great products that are really tailored to help SMEs understand where they are in that regard. And I think the other thing that's really important is, as we also said, markets are different and SMEs are different. So we're also rolling out a digital diagnostic tool that allows small businesses to answer a set of questions and understand what are the products and capabilities that they need to avail themselves most immediately. So I think that's really an important play here as well. And again, we do partner with governments across the globe to bring this forward, to provide the right education and training. And in terms of impact, I think that's also really important. Early days, and I know we have a lot more work to do, but we have seen case studies and instances where SMEs have implemented these digital tools and capabilities that they've been able to drive revenue increases of 20 and 25 and even more %. Really important, of course, in this day and age to really be getting those revenues in the door. So a really, really, I think, important topic for all of us to be tackling together.
Thank you. And I just want to come back actually just to Tim and what I'm going to say moving forward. I'm looking at my clock and we have 17 minutes left, and we've got I've got various questions, but we've had further questions in from the audience. So I think for all answers, if I can be asked for kind of up to 30 seconds maximum or something like that. But Tim, back to you is the question I asked earlier about the kind of, we've been in this coronavirus for 6 months. Back in April, very difficult question. You're covering all sorts of territories and all sorts of different sizes of firm. If you could try and summarize what firms were more looking for then and what governments were thinking they wanted, and what governments more need now, what firms more need now and what governments, how has that evolved? And if I could try and limit the briefness of the answer just to try and get everyone in.
Yeah. So quickly, I would say in any emergency, people are going to ask for anything that they can get. And I think we are now in a position of needing to take the time to think carefully. There's another question in the Q&A about, if credit is not the answer, what is, equity and grants? And I think we really need to put options like that on the table, thinking about what is the long-term possibility. We are not now talking just about how do we get small businesses to survive for 6 weeks. We're talking about how do we get them to survive for another 6 months or another year of some very challenging economic environments. And so we need to put a lot more options on the table, and governments need to be thinking about how creative can we get about tax holidays, about grants, about equity, about concessional credit, and to reinforce what Andrea said, about protecting small businesses from bad actors. fraudulent transactions, predatory lenders, those sorts of things.
Yeah, because the risk of moving to digital too quickly is all sorts of challenges with doing that as well. I'll come to Pavel next, and I again want to ask that same question. And I again say if we can just try and keep our answers to kind of 30 seconds if possible. But Pavel, the question is the same, which is how over the 6 months, sadly so far, of the pandemic, what small businesses were looking for back in March has probably changed. It's evolved to what they want now. Cash is what, and grants is obviously one of the things that, of course, they're going to be looking for. But Pavel, in the Czech Republic, how have you noticed small businesses kind of changing what they're looking for from the government?
Thank you for the questions. I really agree with my colleagues, and I said that for us is absolutely priority digitalization. This is really number one, and I think that the coronavirus pandemic has shown the trend of digitalization from the state administration to the business sector. It's clear, and I think that it turns out that businesses that are able to operate on the internet do not have as many losses as those operating the traditional way. This is clear, and I think that this is clear fact for everybody. And we really would like to prefer and promote these digital projects of SMEs. For example, in connection with cashless economy, cashless transaction, but we have more. And maybe I can add that we have here in the Czech Republic special strategy for digitalization. This is a long-term strategy, and is really, and I can confirm that this is absolutely priority of our government. And I also agree with importance of credit. We need to ensure really money really in the field of really preferential loans, guarantees, and I believe that we have ideal services for SMEs without bureaucracy, and we have really here this special bank which has 30 years history. Also, digitalization, money, and special anti-bureaucratic measures. And I mentioned where is our priority.
Thank you.
This is our concept. This is our strategy.
Thank you, Pavel. And maybe if I can now go back to Daryl to kind of ask that question. I guess you're obviously in the Toronto example focused on local. I sense a kind of city, not quite street specific advice, but clearly my sense is in the opening weeks of the pandemic, small businesses were looking to the national government. They were looking to the capital city to say, you know, what is the government going to do? But you're maybe kind of more local. What's your impression to that first question of how what small businesses are looking for has changed over the 6 months? And is there a sense maybe that the kind of the level of the public sector, the level of government that they're looking to help may have evolved during that time as well? So Daryl, one for you.
Yeah, and then I'll try and be quick here. I'll be honest, I don't know if what they're looking for has changed. I think, the same support mechanisms, obviously to do with commercial rents and wage subsidies and stuff like that are still very prevalent and still, probably issues number 1, 2, 3, and 4. What's been interesting, I think, over the first 6 months is when all this first happened back in March, business owners didn't really, I don't want to say they didn't care about digitization, but they just had so many other things. I always call it they had to deal with life, right? that it's just like this wasn't something that, you know, even though it was very prevalent and important, didn't kind of rise to the top of the food chain, we'll call it. So again, I think they're still looking for the same thing. I think now it's realizing that they can look for that same thing and still look for those other mechanisms of support, like digital transformation and all that other stuff.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is coming either back to you, Daryl, or maybe we'll go to Andrea next. But it relates to that point, which is the kind of we've all alluded to the challenges of digitization as well. So you've got a business that hasn't particularly engaged. There may be some without an email address, some without a website. Daryl, has kind of alluded to that. And then suddenly we're hearing this message of, governments being keen to develop digital economies and whatever. So, Andrea, there's obviously some businesses that may not be suited to going digital. They may not have the capacity. They've got other priority. But what we're hearing that the direction of travel is towards digital business. What would you say, Andrea, to those who are kind of don't feel they've got the it's not a priority, shall I say?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think it's an important one. I think, again, it really gets to understanding where these businesses are and meeting them with the needs that most suit their own journey and progression into digital. I mean, we really believe that getting digital will help all businesses. And so the real question is how. I think it's fair. Maybe not everybody has to open up a website, but consumer behavior has changed, we believe, forever. People are transacting in a digital way, and so being able to accept payments in an easy, safe, secure, socially distanced way is for sure a #1 need. Also, I think, making sure, again, that businesses have the right capabilities that meet their needs, right? So for some, we are rolling out very cost-effective point of sale type terminals and solutions. Also looking to make sure that businesses who perhaps have not been always digital get to participate in the digital way. And so here we can think about professionals or trades. And so they may need a very different solution, but they still should be collecting payments in a digital way. And then you also think about B2B players. So a supplier in Indonesia or Vietnam really often struggles to get paid quickly and easily, and the large corporate buyer may make them wait 60 days. So again, how do we step in, help them get paid in a way that is timely and digital, we think is really important.
Thank you. So looking at the clock again, we have 7 minutes left, and there's 2 questions that have come in that I am keen to ask. But as you know, I've also got one question to kind of sum things up at the end. What I don't think we've got time for is for all of you to answer both questions. So I shall read out the first question first of all, and if someone can signal that they would like to answer it. So the first one is, and it picks up actually a little bit, Andrew, on where you were, but for new small businesses over the short to medium term, what are the sectors that are expected to attract more entrepreneurs? For example, with continuing pandemic lockdowns or likelihood of this, what are the sectors that new entrepreneurs will target and stay away from? We have a second question. So maybe, Andrew, I'll come to you in that, just so the others can think. The second question, which comes from Malcolm Boswell, thank you, Malcolm, is given the comments about small firms being less productive, less innovative, and not net job creators, I think that picks up on Tim's point at the start. Rather mischievous this, but would public funding be, well, fair question, I suppose, would public funding be better targeted at larger firms or specific sectors? So a good question from Malcolm, but maybe if we can look at Anna's question first of all, which I'm just conscious of time. Yes, we got 6 or 7 minutes. So Andrew, which sectors are expected to attract more entrepreneurs in your view? Maybe I'll come to Daryl next.
Thanks, Ian. What we're seeing is some sectors are hit much harder. And they, of course, tend to be the ones that we think of, like restaurants. And I think Daryl's done some great stuff in Canada to help them meet their customers where they want to be, which is often outside. We also see some of the service sectors hit unequally. And I think a really important point that we haven't discussed, and I know it's late in the game here, but small businesses owned by women have also been affected in much harder ways. So a lot of these service jobs, and I think that is something else that people need to be thoughtful and mindful of, because we see when women get access to capabilities and credit that they need, that not only do they grow their business, they lift their communities up, they educate their children, they invest in all kinds of things for their community. So that is just one point I want to make. So in terms of that, I think there are certain sectors that are doing relatively better, and those tend to be things like maybe some other more professional services like doctors, lawyers, as well as trades. I still need to have a plumber come to my house. In fact, I do. And so some of those are doing better. And I think the spirit of the small business entrepreneur, they will find where the opportunity is. And you got to also have a little faith that some of these folks really know where to go. And we've seen an amazing aptitude in that regard as well. Just this ability to kind of shift is just so key.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think we've all seen that in our own lives, how things we used to not think about being digital have suddenly become digital. I'll come to Daryl next with the same question. Is there any particular sector that leaps out? Then I'm going to go to Tim with the other question, the question about why don't we just give, why doesn't the government support large firms? And then I'm going to wrap it up, but with a final question. But if I can ask for about no more than 15, 20 seconds, Daryl, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of industry, I think, I agree with everything Andrea said. I think, you look at industries like home improvement and stuff where, we're just at home and have no choice but to, do those projects that we haven't done or, remodel or whatever it is. I think those stores have all seen explosive growth. And then just on the second half of that question, Ian, around, what industries are we seeing new entrepreneurs in? What's fascinating is I don't think it's a specific industry. I think what people are realizing now is they can take a more data-centric approach to their entrepreneur journey and really tap into this idea of customer engagement and the changing consumer mindset around wanting to support local and small business. So that's more so what we're seeing holistically as opposed to one specific industry.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Thank you. So yeah, over to Tim. And again, sorry, Tim, to ask you to be brief, but why don't we just support large firms is really the question.
Well, it comes back to something that Andrea was just saying too, of who are operating these businesses. So if government only cares about top line macro numbers, right, we should always be channeling all of our resources into the biggest, most successful firms. But the fact is that those are not the firms that are employing low wage workers. Those are not the firms that are owned by median income and below households. So if government has any concern about the rest of society, it's not large firms that are experiencing the most troubles. They have lots of if you look at the stock market, they're not having trouble raising capital right now. It is the small firms, it is the women-owned firms, it is the firms in low-income communities that are challenged, and that's why we should be supporting them.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tim. Yeah, a good answer. So we're at the final couple of minutes. So I've just got a kind of a closing question, and it's a slightly different question for Pavel, given what the question is. So the question, and I'll go in the order of Andrea, Daryl, and then Tim, is if you could just name one change that governments, central or local, could do to help small businesses, what would that single change be? And obviously the question, given that Pavel is kind of in the ministry, is if there's one priority for the Czech government for small businesses at the moment, what is that one priority? But I think I said I'd go to Andrea first with that question. So
thank you for the question.
Sorry, Pavel. I was gonna come to you at the end, if that's okay. If I can go to Pavel.
No,
if I can go to
okay,
Andrea.
well, that's easy. I get to say digital.
Thank you. Very brief.
I mean, yeah. There you go.
So, okay, what's the one change that government should do? Digital. On to Daryl.
I would just say explore more non-traditional partnerships from what they're used to. Get outside their comfort zone a little bit.
Thank you. Tim?
I would say specific programs to make low-cost concessional credit available by working with private sector lenders who won't be able to offer that credit without government support.
Great, thank you. Good answer. And finally, Pavel, what is the one, very briefly, the checks, your department's one priority for small businesses at the moment?
I know that I have to be brief, but one priority, you want one priority, okay, for me is support of family business. This is our priority. We believe that really this family business is backbone of our economy. Also, small and medium-sized enterprises are very important. Maybe you know that we have 99.8% of SMEs in Czech economy. This is my conclusion.
Thank you. There's some data. Tim started off by saying he needed some more data, so there's some data for you, Tim, coming your way. Right, everyone. I'm afraid we're actually out of time, so I just wanted to say I hope everyone on the panel and our worldwide audience found it useful. Thank you to the four of you on the panel for all of your time. Obviously, thank you as well to our knowledge partner, MasterCard. Thanks to everyone for watching. Just to wrap up, we'll be sending a video link of the session so you can watch it back and publishing an article capturing the key messages. But just to say thank you from Global Government Forum and thank you from Global Government FinTech for joining us and all the best. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye from Prague.